You may have noticed that a year or so ago, I released an essay condemning reaction content, especially on Twitch and YouTube. This led to Most Critical ostensibly making a video about my essay, but in reality, he covered very little of it, and what he did cover, he entirely misrepresented. The ensuing drama also inspired those who cover such things to make videos, collectively making some of the most dishonest and poorly argued videos that exist on this platform. Understandably, I felt it necessary to respond to such videos when I found the time, as I, like most people, don't like misinformation, especially about myself. However, I was recently informed that I missed a video from around that time, a video that turns out to be the runt of an already very sickly litter. When I was first informed, my response was, who cares? It was, after all, over a year ago now, and even back then it was a big ask for me to take time out of my busy schedule to make the response videos that I made back then. It seemed inconceivable that this new video could be so pathetically bad that it would be worth the time to respond to it. So I watched the video and, holy shit, it really does need to be seen to be believed. To be honest with you, I've become increasingly defeatist as I've gotten older, largely concluding that combating misinformation is usually a futile venture. In many cases, it will only be a tiny fraction of the people who accept the falsehoods in the first place who will ever be in a position to even see a refutation of them. And even those in that position will have every psychological bias inspiring them to find some superficial reason to dismiss it out of hand. So why make this video at all? Truthfully, in large part, it's because I think it'll be very funny. One of the hardest choices I had when making this video was deciding whether I wanted to cover every single error Gabi made or merely cover the more hilarious greatest hits. For example, there is a section in the video where Gabi brings on her star witness, her sister. And Gabi seems blissfully unaware that the very first thing her sister says refutes something that Gabi claimed in her very own video. The conversation continues and Gabi seems unaware that she's not asking the right questions or even understanding the answers that she's being given, which is obviously a problem you can fall into when you know nothing about the topic that you're trying to speak on. While such moments are hilariously funny, I have ultimately decided to be more thorough in my approach, even though this effectively enslaves me to covering almost every sentence that Gabi uttered, as very little was said that didn't have significant flaw. The only thing this video highlights is that you don't need to be educated in anything to be successful on social media. You don't need to present true information, you don't need to argue well for your perspective. All you need is a narrative that a sufficient amount of people want to hear and the confidence to proclaim it irrespective of any evident justification. It is why throughout social media that it doesn't matter the flavor of bullshit, there is someone peddling it for a lot of money and clout. So let us now begin with the video. React streamers are destroying YouTube, Too Long Did Not Read, Moist Critical and DarkViperAU drama.
Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I am not a drama channel, but here I am. I'm here to take advantage of this finite pool of impressions and deliver facts and logic.
If you're unaware, an impression is any time that you see a thumbnail for a video, basically. I will add this clip of Charlie for a humorous contrast to Gabi's skepticism about the finite nature of impressions on YouTube.
Yes, there is a finite amount of impressions that can go around. Nothing is infinite.
I'm not talking about this because it's drama. I'm talking about this because it covers a topic that I'm pretty passionate about.
While many developments around reaction content have occurred since Gabi released her video, there was no more drama, so Gabi never returned to this topic. Due to what I can only call supreme laziness, Gabi throughout her video puts text on the screen briefly to add information that she forgot to say the first time round. Here she acknowledges that she has a bias towards Moist Critical, but throughout the video she has done her best to come from a factual, objective standpoint. I want you to remember this claim as she speaks throughout this video. Gabi starts off her video with a 4.5 minute, 3-minute summary of the relevant events as she sees them.
Recently, Pokemon and Disguised Toast pushed the narrative of the ongoing DMCA saga, a copyright law written before the internet was the internet by a bunch of old white guys probably sitting around a table wondering how they can make the most money off of copyright. And Poke and Toast purposefully streamed anime to their thousands of viewers that was purposefully behind a paywall, which is indubitably illegal.
To be clear, whether or not you paywall your content has absolutely nothing to do with your degree of copyright protection. When your creative works go on an ad-supported platform like free-to-air TV, radio, or YouTube, it doesn't make it so that people can freely redistribute their content for commercial purposes.
They were both temporarily banned by Twitch. Lots of discourse around this subject started to arise on the internet, which is partially what they wanted. Some people were so mad, like Australian GTA YouTuber DarkViperAU, and he wrote a 14-page manifesto to which he reminds you about 42 times in his angry response video to Critical.
14 pages! On page 14. It's 14 pages long. That's a all of this is untrue. As many of you likely know, my criticism of reaction content predated the TV meta on Twitch by many years. Hell, I already had a trilogy of videos on the topic, which Gabi should know about because they are mentioned in my work. More importantly though, criticism of the TV meta did not start with Disguised Toast and Pokimane. Hell, Disguised Toast and Pokimane were not the first people to stream anime on Twitch, and they were in no way, shape or form the impetus for my writings on the topic. I don't know why she's forcing this narrative that Pokimane and Disguised Toast are like protagonists in this story or something, but it's weird for her to claim that they both pushed an ongoing saga and they started discourse on Twitter. Oh, that ongoing saga? Nah, no one was discussing that on Twitter. What are you talking about? One of the biggest hints that my writings had nothing to do with Pokimane or Disguised Toast is one, that I explained my motivations in the videos that Gabi watched but seemingly ignored, but secondly, my essay came out like a month after Disguised Toast got banned. What does she think, I was in a coma for a month or something?
DarkViperAU posted his unfinished video script in a tweet with the caption, "All reactors are bad people. They exploit others to benefit no one but themselves. Collectively, they have stolen millions of dollars from actual creators and have stopped countless thousands from having a career," which is implying not only that they are small creators, that they are stopping from having a career, but they are actively stealing views, impressions, and etc. from them.
So my essay is about content creators in general, and very rarely speaks of the size of particular creators. Gabi, for whatever reason, does not want this to be true, so therefore has to apply certain tricks to make it seem otherwise. So for example, this sentence refers to actual content creators, so all creators regardless of size. It then refers to a second group that was unable to become content creators. In order to clarify the meaning of this sentence, Gabi just changes some words in it.
Which is implying not only that they are small creators, that they are stopping from having a career.
She claims throughout her video that I'm focused specifically on small creators.
Dark Viper argues in his essay that those views and impressions would have gone to people who would be able to start a career from those impressions. It's not just, oh, these creators are gone, all those impressions are going to smaller creators.
If my essay was about small creators, I probably would have used that phrase even once. In fact, in the 47 times that I speak about content creators in that essay, I only distinguish between them 6 times. And 3 of those references aren't to content creators currently, but those who are becoming content creators in the future. But of course, as you just saw, Gabi did show some text from my essay on the screen. As is always the case whenever she does this, if you read it, you will find out it either directly argues against what she's saying or has nothing to do with it. Absent the existence of React content, more exposure would be going to original content, big and small. So this directly shows that I'm not claiming that reactors only impact small content creators, nor is that my major concern. The first non-highlighted sentence tells you the purpose of this paragraph. The idea of reactors being benevolent overlords seeking out poor downtrodden content creators to give exposure to is of course a convenient lie. It sets up that the purpose of this paragraph is to debunk a particular idea about the motivations of reactors. That claim being that they seek out small content creators to shed a light on. And before going into this, the next sentence is to emphasize that regardless of their motivations, they still have a negative effect on everyone, big and small. This is the only section in the entire essay that focuses specifically on a particular size of content creator, and it only does so because that is the focus of the original claim. So somewhere in the process of editing, Gabi realized that I wasn't just speaking about small content creators, and was speaking about content creators in general. She then eventually realized that the only explicit reference to small content creators that she was putting on the screen constantly, that being these words tiny content creators, also contained a sentence that was directly referencing big and small content creators. But rather than fixing all the misinformation she puts forth in this video, she just puts some text on screen. He does specify small and big content creators eventually, but it does not help his argument. By eventually here, she means page 3. I have no idea how Gabi was okay releasing a video where she said something incorrect like 12 times, but even this attempt at a somewhat correction is still technically wrong. Or at the very least, it'd be more correct to say that the essay does not traditionally distinguish between the effects on large and small creators. You might be surprised at how few explicit references to size there were, but you wouldn't be if you read the essay. The essay is largely interested in the effect of reactors on the market as a whole, or in other words, reactors versus content creators in general. Throughout this video, Gabi shows only 18 seconds of my 47-minute video where I explained my essay. Of the original essay, she showed less than 10%, and I'm being very charitable with that assessment. Very rarely does the text shown on screen have anything to do with what Gabi is saying. For example, at one point she puts a random paragraph on screen to say, "What is this even?" No discussion of the paragraph, it's just for the purpose of saying what is this even. Even in the rare instances where the text is directly referenced, it is as you saw before. She'll highlight a random sentence that doesn't really support what she's saying.
This essay got loads of negative feedback for awful, inaccurate, inconsistent points, and also naming streamers by name, comparing React streamers to sexual assaulters, and something comparing it to slavery. Rightfully upset because he is mentioned by name, Critical makes a video going over Dark Viper's unhinged document, talking about how many of Dark Viper's points are inaccurate and just flat out wrong.
So this too is also false. This timeline implies that when I released my document, there was just waves of condemnation. Everyone from every corner of the internet was just like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. And for that reason, Charlie then spoke on the topic. In reality, I wasn't some big player on Twitter, so when I released my essay, no one really cared. Like, you guys have been on the internet before. How many people do you think will go, hey look, a stranger has written a very, very long essay about an esoteric topic. I'm gonna read that one. The answer was obviously very few people. Gabi seems unaware that I actually put this essay on my Patreon, my Discord, my YouTube community posts, and Twitter received the least response. Providing this explanation, I found that it would take longer than a week to complete Pacifist Percent, but this video script is annoying me by not being out in the wild. While it will be read by few, that will have to suffice until I have time to make it into a video. What feedback I did get largely came from my other social medias and therefore my community, so it was largely positive. And what criticism I did receive, I used to change the essay before it ever reached mainstream attention. It was after I made these changes to my essay that Charlie made his video where he misrepresented to millions of people. This obviously caused a very hostile, misinformed audience to go to that tweet. Prior to that point, it had like 20 comments. And so what criticism I did receive was from those criticized by the work or those who watched them, which is obviously gonna happen, and that's not interesting. Like, it doesn't matter the opinion you express or how innocuous it is. If someone makes a video about it, directing it towards an audience that passionately disagrees, obviously it's gonna receive some criticism. Gabi's dishonesty here is presenting that form of criticism as if it were merely coming from a general impartial audience. Absent Charlie's need to constantly make drama videos about stuff he sees on Twitter, no one would have seen or cared about my words. I can say this with confidence because everything in that document I've said many times before that, and no one cared. I honestly find it funny that the hard-hitting criticism that she points to is Mizkif going, "You dumb as hell." In fact, the tweet that Gabi's showing here isn't even of my essay. More than that, Mizkif's response here also isn't to my essay. Even more than this tweet was made after Moist Critical's video. If you don't know who Mizkif is, he got into a lot of drama for his copious use of racial slurs and accusations of covering up instances of sexual assault. He also didn't read the document.
While agreeing that some forms of React content can be lazy, as I'm sure most of us can agree with. Critical even admitting himself sometimes he is reacting to content lazily, to which he won't then upload that content to YouTube to make money off of it.
Charlie has made literally millions of dollars lazily sitting around watching other people work hard. The implication here that Charlie just isn't making money off this content on Twitch is insane. This also implies that some reaction content that Charlie makes isn't lazy. I would like a breakdown of how a man sitting in a chair pausing occasionally ever reaches the point of not being lazy. Like, sure, that guy did spend 200 hours making that video, but did you see Charlie press the pause button 5 times? The strain on his hand, how does he do it? He's no mere mortal. So we've already spent most of our time in this non-biased, objective, factual summary just defending Charlie. Where do you think she's gonna go from here?
Dark Viper responds to Critical's video with a video that is way too long, ironically making a reaction video. Huh, that's interesting.
So it should be obvious that I didn't make a reaction video, nor anything of the sort that I routinely criticize. I made a response video. For reasons that are never made clear, Gabi implies that any video that contains even a frame of another person's video is a reaction video, even going so far as to directly call commentary channels reaction channels. She was criticized for this in her comments section, but she simply didn't care and just doubled down. Understand, she can do this if she wants to in her own time, but she can't pretend that I or anyone else subscribe to such strange ideas. She doesn't get full reign to ignore the dozen times that I clarified my usage of the term and specified the content that I was critiquing. She doesn't have the right to ignore the meaning that I'm communicating and instead substituting her own. As was once acknowledged back in 2017 by the judge in the H3H3 case, the term reaction content is used to refer to many different types of content. However, it is quite clear that the term has evolved since then with the continued proliferation of live streaming. It largely just refers to people watching videos and giving their first-time impressions as they go. If you search reaction video on YouTube, it's not going to pop up with Gabi's favorite commentary channel. But more importantly, when it comes to criticizing my work and beliefs, it matters how I'm using the term, not how other people use it. When communicating my beliefs on the topic, I clarified my usage of the term like a dozen times. Gabi seems to have either ignored this or not understood it.
Talking in circles saying that Critical was purposefully misrepresenting his 14-page manifesto, even though he was directly quoting what Dark Viper said in the essay and doubling down on Twitter. There was no context forgoed here. It was not taken out of context. I looked for myself.
Yeah, so that 47-minute video that Dark Viper made, yeah, the only thing he said in it was that he didn't like that like 2 sentences were taken out of context. There's not even the veneer of trying not to be dishonest. She just goes, well, they'll believe me, it's fine. Obviously, my criticism was far-reaching, and Charlie didn't just take one thing out of context in my document, he misrepresented the entire thing. Something he later admitted to and apologized for, although saying it was an accident, not something he intended. In fact, the reason why I kept referencing the length of my essay was to highlight that Charlie wasn't covering any of it. He made a video ostensibly about my essay, and the only parts he showed was like 3 sentences, where he pretended that flippant remarks and analogies were literal statements, even though they didn't even make sense taken literally. The problem with Gabi attempting to assess herself as to whether or not my words were taken out of context is not only that she's obviously really biased, but also she's not very bright. Understanding context requires you to understand the words that have been written, and Gabi clearly didn't, as is going to be revealed more and more as this video goes on.
Maybe, just maybe, your essay was poorly written, and everyone misunderstood it because it was poorly written.
Throughout this video, Gabi will assert time and time again that everyone read my essay. That everyone was like, hey, a random stranger on the internet wrote a very long essay about an esoteric topic that Charlie didn't link below his video, and that Charlie has effectively applied his rape apologia. I'm gonna go out and put on my reading glasses and light a fire and read that one. So obviously later we're going to talk more about how insane that is, but ruminate on that for a bit. And Gabi continuously pretending that I got no support for my words is just dishonest. Which is everyone on the planet was universally against me, even though like everything that I put out got more likes than dislikes. Like overwhelmingly more, which is certainly not a guarantee when a person has 10 times your audience. No piece of writing exists that would be understood by everyone, let alone agreed with by everyone. That neither Charlie nor Gabi understood my essay is not necessarily my fault. Gabi has to make an argument for that beyond simply saying they didn't understand it. But it's obviously quite a stretch for Gabi to say that no one understood my essay and no one agreed with it.
Critical responds to Dark Viper's long-ass response video, saying that he agrees that he misunderstood some of the points Dark Viper explained lazily in his essay, leaving the viewer to have to make things up in their head in order to try to understand what Dark Viper's trying to say. But Critical doubles down that the argument that watching content that isn't yours on stream means it is a misunderstanding of you don't want to ask for consent, therefore you are akin to someone who would sexually assault someone, which is verbatim what you said. You can't say I never said that because you did.
What the fuck do you think verbatim means? It means exactly the same words. So let me just pull up my essay and search for these words and see if that's what I verbatim said. Whoops, Gabi's lying. Oh no. Not only is this not what I said in the essay, it's not even an argument in the document. It's not even relevant to anything that I was talking about. Gabi's gonna put this tweet on screen to misrepresent it a lot. Not only is her interpretation of these words incorrect, but she's also cropping off the next 2 tweets. One where I directly call these words hyperbole to mean that I'm exaggerating and this should not be taken literally. And I made another tweet specifically for dishonest people like Gabi, where I say, I'm not saying that rape and reaction content are akin to each other. I'm sure she just left those off by accident.
Critical ends his video amicably, but being honest about where he got things wrong. Finally, Dark Viper ended this saga with his final video, which is a bit shorter, thank God. So that's the TLDR of what's going on. It's basically a question and argument of React streamers, of how if they were gone, the impressions would go to other channels, which is true, but it's not true to the fact that Dark Viper argues in his essay that those views and impressions would have gone to people who would be able to start a career from those impressions.
Not only is that not a central point in my essay, even if that were true, I still wouldn't care. This sentence does not at all imply that my main interest is giving impressions to people so they can start careers. In fact, I reiterate in the essay and my videos that they would be spread out everywhere in the market, because every impression that went to a Reactors video would have gone to someone else. I'm not saying who that is, doesn't matter to me, but they would have had to go somewhere else. Yes, that would necessarily cause some people to have careers, sure, but that's not my main interest or focus.
This is wrong for many number of reasons. The viewer can just leave the platform once Danny Gonzalez is gone, not reacting to things anymore. They would go watch Netflix or something. And also I think Ethan Klein brought up a good point that actually larger creators create more impressions because people like their content and are binging their content more. There are more opportunities for impressions the more videos that people watch on YouTube, arguably from larger creators. And those recommendations will recommend similar content or content they think you'd be interested based on what you're watching so far.
So this is just an assertion. There is no argument being made here, and obviously we don't judge changes based on just their potential negatives. We compare the potential positives and negatives of the old system versus the positives and negatives of the new system. This is a problem that Gabi has throughout this entire video. Simply asserting without evidence bad things may happen does not potentially offset any good things that may happen. I'm sorry, Billy, we can't give you that heart transplant because hypothetically speaking, you could stub your toe on the way out of the hospital. What Gabi is alluding to here is something that people preach in many different areas of discourse, and that is that we simply need the rich to get richer. Don't you understand? They are the job creators. If we just convince them all at the top to upload 100 videos a day, oh, the prosperity that we'd all see. In reality, larger entities in a market taking an even larger share of that market doesn't traditionally see other smaller entities in that market better off. Gabi needs to present actual arguments to try to substantiate that the rich getting richer will ultimately lead everyone to being better off. While Gabi doesn't make even a single argument in favor of her assertion that a loss of reaction content would cause a significant difference in retention on the platform, I will still argue against this assertion. So the first reason why I disagree is the nature of the content. Reaction content is the laziest content that exists and ultimately consists of re-uploads of content that is already on the platform. Secondly, it is not large creators that are keeping people on the platform, but the algorithm itself. It is the algorithm's ability to find audiences for content that leads those audiences to stay on the platform and keep coming back. If reaction content didn't exist, the machine learning that powers the website wouldn't become worse. It was machine learning that led to these creators being successful in the first place, so it's a hard thing to argue that they would be irreplaceable by that same machine learning. Thirdly, YouTube already has around 1 billion videos on the platform. 1 billion! Anytime you see an impression, click not interested and refresh the page. It will give you something else. At any given time, there are countless videos that the algorithm has about the same confidence that you will click them. If reaction content ceased to exist, everyone who would have received impressions for that content could be split into 3 categories. For one group of people, these new impressions would be just as satisfying as the old, and so would use the platform the same amount. There would be a second group that would be less satisfied and so would use the platform less. But there would be a third category that coincidentally finds these new impressions more engaging and so therefore uses the platform even more. Over a large enough sample, and we are talking about billions of people here, the amount of retention on the platform should not change significantly. It could even go up as people would be more inspired to make original, unique content, because it would be more rewarded on the platform. But I argue, even in the case where it goes down, the amount that is clawed back from the reactors would wholly dwarf that. To express that idea in numbers, it's like reactors are getting 100 views. And if they left, those people would only generate 99 views on the platform. Those 99 views being clawed back from the reactors would ultimately represent a greater win for the original content than what would be lost by the platform as a whole. If you want to visualize that idea, it's like you have 10 people working on a farm, all producing roughly the same amount of food that they all share from. But there is one dude who eats 50% of the food that everyone produces, while only producing 10% himself. If that guy left, sure, you'd have 10% less food, but everyone who was left would have more food as a result because the glutton wasn't taking so much. This is just to represent the idea that even in a case where someone produces something, it doesn't mean the loss of that something necessarily represents a loss for everyone as a whole.
Like, I'm sorry, I would have never clicked on the ass movie Curtis Connor was reacting to in his video had I not seen Curtis Connor's reaction video about it. I would not have clicked on that video.
Right, because you just talked about it 10 seconds ago. The recommendation wouldn't be for that movie. It'd be something that you would likely click. If that impression didn't go to Curtis, it would go to someone that the algorithm thinks you're equally likely to click. And there'd be someone else on the platform who would actually like to see that movie, and who, instead of being shown an impression to that movie, a movie that they would have watched, is instead being shown a reaction video to something entirely different. Gabi, like a lot of people, doesn't understand that this isn't an issue of 2 individuals interacting in some way. We're talking about the effects on the entire market, over billions of people.
To me, this whole argument about stealing views is the dumbest thing I have ever heard in my life, because it's the same argument that people made about titty streamers on Twitch. I'm sorry, if they weren't watching Amaranth, they wouldn't be watching you, Dark Viper. They would go to porn. or they're going to find someone else who's going to provide that same content that they find valuable to themselves. They're not going to go watch some obscure hot dog making channel now that Amaranth is gone, and those impressions could go to someone who you think deserves it. Which is partially what Dark Viper says in his essay, that it would only benefit those original content creators, which is just not true.
So this is just word salad where I don't think Gabi even knows what she's saying. Amaranth! Titty streamers! Sausage man! What's more important is the text on screen, because despite Gabi saying he's wrong, he doesn't know what he's talking about, on screen she says something different. This is technically true, but you can say that about any type of large content on YouTube, that if it was gone, the views would go to someone else. This is another instance of Gabi, while she was editing this video, realizing that she was really wrong. Of course, a person who cared about what's true and doesn't want to misinform their audience would have either removed this section or at least re-recorded it. Not Gabi though. But to speak to this text counter-argument, yeah Gabi, if you removed other forms of content, it could have similar effects to removing reaction content. Although that would largely depend on what type of content you're talking about. But that's entirely beside the point. Regardless of whether or not you agree with it, the entire purpose of my essay is to draw a distinction between actual content creators and reactors. While they both do exist in the market and do seek to take greater market share, reactors, I argue, are doing something unethical. They are harming others to get ahead in the game. Content creators are working hard to make original creative things and therefore deserve the market share that they take. Reactors are merely stealing from others in an attempt to usurp that same market. Regardless of whether or not Gabi agreed with that claim, if she understood it, she would not have made the objection she just made. Gabi's objection would be like me saying, hey, I don't think you should kill that person for $100. And Gabi would respond, yeah, but you can get $100 in many other ways, so why object to that one? Like, there's obviously specific things about shooting a person that I have an issue with. It's not the $100 that I have an issue with. So it's important to understand that every single person only has 24 hours in a day. Obviously, if a person doesn't spend time on one thing, they will spend it on something else. So for example, if I didn't exist making content, yeah, every person who's ever watched me would have done something else with their time. My existence doesn't make the algorithm significantly better. Therefore, every single one of the viewers who's ever watched me would be shown something else. They'd be scattered all around the market, watching different things, their lives being about the same. Like, I have no issue with titty streamers on Twitch. But yeah, if hypothetically they didn't exist or had never existed, then all those people would be doing other things with their time. If they were in a position to want content online, and hell even went to Twitch to find it, then a lot of those people would have ended up in different Twitch live streams. One issue Gabi has with understanding consumer behavior is that she believes that anyone who finds a particular thing was necessarily looking for that thing. Like if Gabi saw a person walking along and they happened to stop, look down and pick up a $2 coin, she would assume that person was necessarily looking for that $2. The reason it's called the browse section on Twitch is because people generally go there to look for things of interest. And of course, people have multiple interests, including things they haven't even discovered yet, so they could be captivated by any number of things. And some of those people would just happen to get captivated by a titty streamer at that point in time. But again, I have no issue with titty streamers. I don't even like that phrasing. As long as it's within TOS, not somehow damaging the platform in some meta way, it's fine. I don't really see it as different from using other natural advantages, like your wonderful voice or your beautiful face.
There's also the idea of consenting to having your video be reacted to, which again is a moot point and is a terrible one at that. Because if we had to ask permission to react to people's videos, and like Ethan said in his video, it is free speech, it just doesn't make any sense.
Merely saying that Ethan Klein said that is a little bit of an understatement.
Right to free speech. Free speech, and what a reaction video ultimately is free speech. We value free speech, and I just consider it free speech. Free speech, free speech, free speech, free speech. This is protected speech, my friend. Free speech. It's speech, dude. It's free speech, bro. Free speech. Speech. Free speech, fair use, right? We're talking about free speech. Guess what? Free speech. Free speech.
Yeah. Free speech.
That's not how free speech works.
Unfortunately, neither Gabi or Ethan ever present an argument as to why the global redistribution rights of other people's creative works is either some aspect of free speech or necessary for us. Like, does Gabi sincerely believe to call a book shit that she needs to sit a person down and read that person the entire book? Or she has to give them a free copy of the book to say, hey, I don't like this, here's a copy. That's just crazy. But more importantly, in regards to Gabi constantly going bah 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 free speech, we obviously have multiple values that need to be balanced. Obviously, we want people to be able to express themselves freely, but we also want people's efforts to be rewarded, and these efforts not to be taken for someone else's profit, especially when it's to the detriment of the person who put in that effort. It's why there's wide public agreement on the idea of fair use, although not necessarily where that line should lie. Fair use seeks to balance these often diametrically opposed values. Gabi or Ethan jumping up and down going free speech doesn't speak to the complexities of these issues.
Can you imagine if you had to ask permission from like this stupid alpha male podcast to react to their content and shit on it? No, they're gonna say no, obviously, and then those people who don't know any better are gonna fall into their stupid traps. Can you imagine if we had to ask permission to roast Rice Gum on that controversy? Asking for permission to react to your content is a stupid idea. It prevents people from calling out behavior that is stupid and wrong, and things we need to raise awareness on. If you can't freely go, hey, that guy's content is shit and it's dangerous, what kind of a place would the world be right now? This goes beyond your limited view of reacting to random TikToks on stream. This is a dangerous idea and it's a stupid one at that.
So Gabi literally watched me make 2 videos where I said, hey, this guy Moist Critical's content, it's shit. Didn't ask for consent, didn't ask for permission. That should have created warning sirens in Gabi's mind that she's not understanding something here. Obviously, in my work, I draw huge distinctions between people responding to people's content using parts of someone else's work to create some context, and someone just sitting giving their first-time impressions of some content. People have been saying, hey, that person's content is shit and harmful for as long as humans have existed. And they obviously managed to do this without the ability to easily reproduce the entirety of another person's creative work. Like what you see here is a response video, and I'm perfectly fine with that content existing. I've watched Gabi's video many times. I know I can use this content to make something original. I have things to say, and the only things I will include are things that are necessary for what I'm talking about. This is very different from Reactors, say, hosting watch parties and sitting around watching content that they have no rights or reason to watch. It's like, hey, I'm just gonna keep watching this high quality content. If I do or say nothing, who cares? I'll chuck it on YouTube anyway. Took no time to make, and if it fails, who cares? I haven't expended any effort, and if it does get me some growth and money, great. Reactors are using reactions to avoid all the difficulties in making live streaming and YouTube content to still get those same rewards. I will add on to here, actual reaction videos to call out other people's content and debunk it in some way are wholly irresponsible. If you're merely showing someone your first impression of something, you've done no research, you don't really know what they're talking about in the entire video, you're going to miss points, you're going to poorly respond to points, and all this can directly harm your ability to combat that content. Responsibly calling out harmful content, whatever the type, requires a lot of preparation and research. People have a psychological bias where if they see their views be challenged and not overwhelmed in their view, they become stronger in their person. So if you challenge something unsuccessfully, everyone who agreed with that is like, yes, I knew my view was right. The sort of people who make reaction videos to ideological, political, or social content are very irresponsible and often do far more harm than good simply because they don't want to go the effort of actually making a creative video where they do research and respond correctly. I will add on to this though, if you are personally being attacked by some work, I think you have every right to actually react to it. I don't think it's a good move for you, but if a person's talking about you directly or using a substantial amount of your work, then you should be able to do whatever you want with it. As far as I'm concerned, you are involved in the production of the original work and therefore have at least some rights to use that content. So this isn't a reaction video, but I do think I would have been well within my rights to react to Gabi's video. The funniest thing about the previous section where Gabi says we need reaction content to call out harmful content is that she herself right now is making a video that is not a reaction video and she's purporting to be calling out my harmful content. Her own video disproves the premise that she's trying to argue for. She doesn't sit watching my video, pausing it and giving her thoughts as she goes. She's not hosting a watch party for my video. Hell, she's not even showing it. Although arguably that's because she wants to lie about its contents. But regardless, she is technically still speaking on my video without showing it to people. She is claiming to call out the harmful things I said without reacting to them. It is very rare for a person to be arguing for a premise and in the way that they argue for that premise, debunk that very premise. Now you may be wondering, does Gabi ever talk about actual reactors and reaction channels, people who dedicate their time to mainly uploading reaction content? Channels like this one, Gore the Movie God. He uploads a reaction video roughly every hour, and of course, due to his ability to spam the algorithm with high quality content that he did not make, he of course grows. If you believe that Gabi, even for a moment in this video, presents a fair, honest depiction of reaction content, then you haven't been paying attention.
And to compare this idea of not asking for consent to react to content to the type of person who would sexually abuse someone is disgusting. And in both of Dark Viper's response videos and on Twitter, he doubles down that this analogy is okay, that it's a good analogy, and it makes sense. Reacting to content and saying something is bad, exercising your free speech, is not the same as abusing someone and attacking someone's body against their will.
I probably don't need to point out the dishonest framing where Gabi has implied that I said that exercising your free speech is the same as rape. Like, does Gabi have no shame? My issue is that reactors look at the creative works of others, people who've spent hundreds of hours on this content. They've not seen it before, they have no particular use for it, they have nothing to add necessarily at this point, and they go, I'm sure that creator would probably prefer if I were to ask them before rebroadcasting their entire work for money. Ah, fuck them! I don't care what they want. Only my wants matter. Give me more. Me. Does that make them a rapist? No. Does that make them a person who's perfectly willing to put aside the needs and wants of other people, specifically for their own selfish gain? Absolutely. And as I'll argue to the day I die, I do not think reactors are ignorant of the negative impact that they have on others. And certainly it is the case that when they are confronted about this harm, they change nothing about their business practices, because the change would forego growth and profit. And after all, what is the well-being of other people when compared to such things? In this particular case, the reason why I call this hyperbolic, which of course Gabi crops off every single time, is because obviously there is a huge difference between reacting to content and raping a person. I never called reactors rapists, but obviously you can see the similarities in the thought process that goes into either acts. It is entirely dishonest for Gabi to ignore effectively everything I wrote and said in my video, and instead focus on a random tweet while pretending it's my essay. Obviously, when a person tweets, they aren't expecting an extremely dishonest person to microanalyze those words, and certainly not crop off half of them. Obviously, in hindsight, I would have communicated in ways that would less enable Gabi to be this dishonest now. But more importantly, a comparison of two things in some way does not mean they're the same in every way. When Shrek compares ogres to onions, you don't think, oh, so Shrek is saying that ogres are the exact same thing as onions. Gabi and a lot of other equally dishonest people who just want an easy reason to dismiss me want to pretend otherwise. They want to play dumb on this issue. My analogies and references only exist to highlight the value of consent, especially when we put a great reliance on other people. They also existed to criticize the mindset of reactors. At no point did I say reactors rape people or are rapists. I'll say again, at no point did I say reacting and raping are the same things. I said the exact opposite. Gabi wants to pretend otherwise.
One of Dark Viper's last points is that React content is killing smaller channels, doesn't help them at all, and prevents thousands of channels from having a career. In his words, I am not making this shit up.
If you like, it's a similar argument to how Walmart can enter an area and that can have a negative impact on the smaller businesses around there.
And there's a stupid comparison in his essay about the time of labor the original content creator took to create their piece of work that is being reacted to by someone who is lazily sitting there, taking much less time to react to that work and upload it as original content. And therefore, since the reactor took less time to react to the content, to where the original content took longer to make, and that reactor is stealing views from the original content, which is not true. This whole idea ties back to something that I have experienced in working in freelance, is that we usually charge by project basis and not hourly. And do you know why? Because if you've gone to school for 10 years learning how to be a graphic designer and you start to charge hourly for something that can take you 30 minutes to do, but a less experienced designer about 5 hours to do, what are you going to do? Are you going to charge hourly so that way you can be paid less for working quicker and more efficiently? Or are you going to pay the lesser experienced graphic designer 5 times more than you because you value the time it took to create the project rather than the end result and the quality of the product that you just produced in the first place? This is why we charge on a project basis and not hourly. Because I don't care how long you took on this dumbass production, it's still a production, and people are going to criticize it. This is basically the woe is me argument. I spent so long making this video, why is no one watching it? It doesn't matter if you took 10 minutes or 10 hours on this video. If it's a video, it is a video, and people won't want to watch it.
So the problem with everything said here is that it purports that reactors and creators are doing the same thing, but reactors possess more skill and thus doing it faster. Which, is obviously not true. Copying something does not traditionally represent a greater manifestation of skill than what was used to create it the first time. Gabi is claiming that the reactor and creator are both equally starting at ground floor. They are then both going through the same process of making something, but the reactor just has that little bit more skill, so completes that job faster. But in reality, the creator is using their skill to make something, say in 500 hours, and then the reactor is skipping the creative process entirely by copying something that already exists. If this creator wasn't doing that 500 hours of work, this reactor would have nothing. This 500 hours had to exist for the reactor to get here at all. So to be crystal clear, this reactor isn't using skill to create something faster, they are skipping the creative process entirely. The reaction video wasn't made in less time. It still took 500 hours to make. It's just that effort was done by someone else who wasn't the reactor. Speaking of freelance, if I hired you for a job and I found out that you just copied someone else's work, I'd fire you and expect my money back. Hell, I might even sue you depending on the context. So the hypothetical that existed here was to highlight this disparity in the market and what that might do. So if you have something that takes 500 hours to do, I've defined it this way. In the hypothetical, it will always take 500 hours. But you have one person who has to do that 500 hours, and you have another person who can just steal it in half an hour. Who is winning out here? This person has to spend the 500 hours. This person can just keep stealing 500-hour productions over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Over the course of this person making one thing, this person has hundreds of them. This represents the reactee's relationship to the reactor. Who is winning here? Can you not see the imbalance in effort and reward? What's worse to me is Gabi doesn't seem to understand how hypotheticals work. I defined the parameters of this thought experiment specifically to bring forth questions that you have to answer. Rather than answering these questions, she just changed the parameters of the hypothetical. She said, oh, well, actually, but the reactor's just working harder with more skill to do the 500 hours faster. Literally impossible by the parameters of the hypothetical. It's like if she was given the moral dilemma of the trolley problem. You've got a trolley going towards 4 people. Do you pull the switch and make it so the trolley only hits 1? Gabi's response to this would be, well, actually, that one guy there, his name's Frank, and he's a master escape artist, so he would manage to untie himself and get away. So of course I'd pull the lever, because then no one would die. It misses the point of hypotheticals. It misses the point of thought experiments. Like, obviously, on my desktop, if I copy and paste the Lion King movie, I shouldn't expect a phone call from Disney where they're like, oh my God, Mr. Dark Viper, sir, you created the Lion King movie in like 5 seconds. The amount of skill that must have required is insane. It took us like thousands of people working for years to make that movie, and you made it in 5 seconds. Holy shit, please get down here. You're gonna save us hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't expect this phone call because no one is as dumb as Gabi seems to be. These issues are actually mirrored in the debate currently around AI art, where artists are having their work taken and used in machines that only really exist to supplant them in their job. In the same way that reactors are taking the work from original creators with the only purpose of taking market share away from them. If you want some crude diagrams that show the relationship between reactors and creators, it looks something like this. We have 7 creators who've spent a week making 7 videos, and they go right into Asmongold's pocket. They are not asked to be involved in this relationship and are not paid for their involvement. The next day, 7 more people work in 7 days to make 7 videos right into Asmongold's pocket. And this happens every single day. I'm not sure how bereft of your senses you would have to be to not see the imbalance in effort and reward here. But I'm sure Gabi would merely scream, no, you don't understand, Asmongold needs to upload 1,000 videos a day. Then will we see global prosperity.
This whole mentality of that there is a finite pool of impressions for exposure is so dumb. And he says if you understand the creator market, he says this in multiple times. He says if you understand the creator market, this is how it works. That's his source. His source is literally trust me, bro. He says this in the essay, he says this in his response video, and that is not how it works. It's not how it works at all, which is so surprising to hear someone who knows so little about how YouTube works from someone who has 900,000 subscribers. It's really coming across that you have no idea how any of this works.
So throughout her video, Gabi scoffs at the idea that there's a finite pool of impressions. And to be honest with you, this is the funniest claim in this video. So here's Charlie.
Yes, there is a finite amount of impressions that can go around. Nothing is infinite.
Understand, he's not getting that from me. Traditionally what happens is you go to school, you learn your ABCs, you learn your 1, 2, 3s, and then you find out that there are no true infinites in reality, and then you graduate. I'm obviously being a bit facetious, but speaking more seriously, in this context at least, the infinite and finite represent a true dichotomy. In other words, if you're arguing something isn't finite, you are asserting that it is infinite. Understand, people have been debating the idea of the infinite for literally thousands of years. You got your old boy Aristotle back in the day just throwing hands on the topic. And people still debate it to this day, with one of the key points being whether or not infinites actually exist in reality. Sure, the concept of the infinite is used in mathematics, but when you try to apply it to the real world, things get dicey. One of the biggest problems is that you can show that something ends, but how do you show that something never ends? Because you can't demonstrate that. It will outlast you and potentially everything else. So obviously I'm not going to spend the time to weigh in on the philosophical debate around the idea of the infinite, but it was very funny effectively listening to Gabi yell at the greatest minds that humanity has ever produced. What the fuck are you talking about? Of course things in reality are infinite. Impressions on YouTube are infinite. You're so dumb! So other than simply appealing to the principle that nothing in reality is truly infinite, how do we know that impressions on YouTube are finite? There are many different limiting factors we can talk about, but ultimately it's reducible to just 2. The first being the amount of people that exist and the amount of time that they have to perceive impressions. Both of these being finite necessitates that impressions are finite as well. Whether you count the impressions for a day, a week, a month, the entire history of YouTube, what you're going to come back with is a finite number. A very big number, mind you, but still a finite number. But of course, we as creators aren't really concerned about how many impressions there are on YouTube like 1,000 years from now, because I'll be dead. Who cares? What I'm interested in is getting the algorithm to give me as many of those limited impressions that are available right now. Like, you should be able to conceptualize that you personally, over the course of a day, will only be able to see a certain amount of impressions. Even if that's all you wanted to do was just see as many impressions as possible. Like just scrolling on your page, impression after impression after impression. But at the end of the day, that'd be a finite number. That is true of every person that interfaces with the platform. By the end of the day, there is only a finite amount of impressions that could be given out. But YouTube has hundreds of millions of videos, perhaps even more than a billion. Every single one of those videos can't get a million impressions every day, because there's a finite number of them. The algorithm has to pick and choose what things get promotion, because everything can't be equally promoted or infinitely promoted for that matter. It is why YouTube has invested literally billions of dollars in making this algorithm as good as possible. Every one of those impressions is a finite resource, and they want them to be as accurate as possible in delivering the content that people want to see. When I make my videos better, my titles better, my thumbnails better, what I'm ultimately saying is, hey algorithm, yeah, see Frank over there? Yeah, he's got good videos, sure, but what about my video? You could give him that impression, that's absolutely true, but mine, way better, bro. People love this video. While this can be looked at in different ways, it is true to say that what we're ultimately trying to do as creators is convince the algorithm that it can get the most views out of our content compared to anyone else's. Like sure, you could give some of those finite impressions to those guys over there, but what about your boy DarkViperAU? People love me, bro.
There is this scarcity mindset in content creators, which I've worked on in therapy. There is enough room at the top. Just because your friend is blowing up doesn't mean that you won't.
So you likely know by, living life that no marketplace can support an infinite amount of successful people. There can't be an infinite amount of successful doctors, or an infinite amount of successful lawyers, or an infinite amount of successful garbage men. I necessarily have to speak simply, but there will always be some amount of demand that is going to be met by some amount of supply. There is no amount of demand that can ever support an infinite amount of supply. To be somewhat reductive, the numbers I suppose don't matter that much, but MrBeast gets 1 billion views a month, and YouTube as a platform in total gets like 200 billion views. So the platform could support 200 MrBeasts. That's it. If there were 200 MrBeasts, no one else would have a job. Obviously you can see how I'm being reductive, because the platform could grow bigger or smaller if there were more MrBeasts. But at the end of the day, even if every single person on the planet was doing nothing but watching YouTube, there could only be a finite amount of people getting 1 billion views every month. There are just not enough people with enough time for everyone to do that. The larger you are as a creator, the fewer of you that the marketplace could ultimately support, regardless of how big it grows. Gabi's example here of 2 people becoming successful who are friends, it's like, well, yeah, that could obviously happen. That doesn't imply that an infinite amount of people can be at the top. And to be a bit pedantic, if everyone was at the top, then there would be no top. We just have like a plane. So even logically, everyone couldn't be at the top. I don't think Gabi realizes how top-heavy social media is. The distribution of success in social media matches the distribution of wealth in the world. In that most people have nothing, then there's a couple of people who have a little bit, and there's a couple of people who have a little bit more, and there's like a tiny portion who have basically everything. Twitch is one of the few social medias where we can see this most clearly because their data is so readily available. On Twitch, it's like 10,000 streams represent like 99.95% of the viewership. On YouTube, I'm only aware of one study that tried to look at things, and I think it was in 2019, they found that 87% of the views went to the top 3% of channels. This weird fantasy land of Gabi's where there's room for everyone at the top makes even less sense when you look at the subscriber distribution on YouTube. Again, there aren't official numbers, but you can extrapolate from data that is available. Like this estimate, for example, has found that 28 million channels have made it to 100 subscribers or more. But of those channels, only 300,000 have made it to 100,000 or more. Of those channels, only 32,000 have made it to 1 million. And of those channels, only 1,000 have made it to 10 million. This website is largely controlled by a tiny portion of people at the top, and even if Gabi really doesn't want that to be true, that is true. That is reality.
People aren't going to watch one video on something and then never want to watch another video on that same topic again. Why do you think commentary channels talk about the same things in trends and they all get really good views? People want to watch these people for their personalities.
So many mistakes here. So obviously every commentary channel doesn't get a heap of views. Gabi seems to have this issue where she doesn't think things exist if she doesn't personally see them. Commentary channels that don't get a lot of impressions and therefore don't get a lot of views won't be seen by Gabi, but obviously they exist in hordes. The market has a certain amount of demand for commentary on anything, and eventually the supply will meet that demand. Like think of yourself, likely at one point you heard a story once and you were like, wow, that story is great, I'm gonna listen to someone else talk about that story. But what about a third person, a fourth person, a fifth person, a sixth, a seventh, an eighth, and ninth? Eventually you're gonna hit a point where you're like, look, I've heard enough about this story, I'm done. But of course, you're not only limited by your interest, you're limited by your time. You simply could not, even if you wanted to, watch infinite videos on a topic. The amount of people who will watch a story once is more people than the amount that will watch it a second time, or a third time, or a fourth time, or a fifth time, or a sixth time. It's why in the commentary game, there's a premium for being the first person on a topic. Yes, it is true that some people watch videos specifically for the personality in them, but obviously you already have to be a successful commentary channel for that to be true. And even for the successful ones, you can obviously see there's a huge fluctuation between the views they get on different videos. The reason for this is that the topic obviously matters. And a part of what goes into the value of a topic for commentary is how much other people have covered it and how much our audience is sick of the topic. Like, I'm sure you've had that experience where people are continuously talking about a topic and you're just like, oh my god, can people stop talking about this? I've heard so much about it, just shut up! Move on to something else! That, to a greater or lesser extent, happens with everyone for every topic. Like, take Philip DeFranco, for example. He's covered recent news stories for a very long time on YouTube. Probably has a bit of a dedicated audience, you could say. But imagine if he kept the same format, but instead of covering recent news, he covered news that happened like 3 weeks ago. News that everyone's already heard about, has been covered by endless different amounts of people, has been discussed to death. Every one of his viewers has already heard about it and seen it. You can probably imagine that Philip DeFranco would get a lot fewer views. It can certainly be the case that more people speaking on a topic can lead to increased demand for commentary on that topic. But that demand, of course, will not be infinite. The supply will eventually meet the demand and then it will taper off. So bottom line, for every topic, there's a certain amount of demand for us that will eventually be filled by a certain amount of creators. There cannot be infinite successful commentary channels because there is not infinite demand for any commentary on any topic. So for example, gaming news, I listen to Skill Up and Game Ranks. That's it. Not only do I physically not have time to listen to any more, this is enough. My entire demand for that type of commentary met by 2 people. And you are likely the same. You can probably list off a handful of people that you watch for different types of commentary, and then you're done. It is actually also true that there's only a finite amount of demand for personalities as well. Like, no person has the capacity to acknowledge and care about infinite personalities. You will have a handful of creators that you like on any given topic, and that's it.
React content is valuable. If React content was so bad and trash and unvaluable because they spent no time on it, why are 40,000 people sitting in Pokimane stream watching her watch stuff? Why are 70,000 people watching SQC react to a video? Why are people watching Danny Gonzalez's video on a stupid movie that he watched? People watch React content because they liked the reactor. They're not there to watch the original content you're saying through that channel. You're saying that these React channels are a one-stop shop for content, so why would they go anywhere else? That is not true, and that's not how it works. I'm there to watch Danny Gonzalez make fun of this movie. I'm not there to watch the movie through his channel. If I wanted to go watch the movie, I will go watch the movie. And chances are I wouldn't have heard of the movie if I hadn't watched his reaction video on it.
So it is sometimes useful to write down what you're saying and then phrase it as an argument and see if it makes sense. So Gabi's argument here is that DarkViperAU must be wrong, that reaction content is harmful and exploitative because there's an audience that likes it. So you can probably see how this argument doesn't make sense if you look at this list of things that are going on screen right now that all have audiences and that are really, really, really terrible, harmful things. The existence of people who like something or even support something is not necessarily indicative of that thing not being harmful to someone else. It's why you can hear economists talk about negative externalities in the market, where you have 2 groups in an exchange, but a third group somewhere is being royally fucked over by whatever these 2 groups are doing. So it's important to recognize that we as consumers are not presented with literally every option when we make a choice. When a person goes to Twitch, it's not like time has stopped and they go, stream, and go all the way down to the million streams that are live and go, stream 5,432. That is the optimal stream for me to watch. In reality, we just look for something that's good enough to satisfy. So even conceptually, you can understand that the content that a person watches on their stream does matter. Like if you look up the reaction videos that Asmongold has produced, for example, there's obviously a huge disparity in the amount of views that those videos get. And if Asmongold sat on stream watching some guy paint a wall day in, day out, obviously his viewership would go down. Gabi's claim here is it doesn't matter the quality of the content that is stolen, nothing changes. So a reactor reacting to a blank wall would have the same market value as a reactor reacting to a movie that costs hundreds of millions of dollars. That is just an absurd claim. So it's important to realize that to some extent the algorithm dictates popularity. A good example of this is my Clips channel. When Shorts first came out, the algorithm for long form content and short form content were combined. Shorts being limited to 1 minute led to a lot more people watching 1 minute or less clips. This led to the algorithm going, oh my god, people love clips that are under a minute. Keep pushing them in the algorithm, And so my Clips channel got hundreds of millions of views because the algorithm was convinced people must love really short clips. But of course, this was just a quirk in the system. When YouTube fixed this by splitting the Shorts algorithm and the long form content algorithm, my Clips channel crashed into the ground. The content didn't change, but the parameters of the algorithm changed, and therefore I got less views. On Twitch, the reason why reactors have grown very big is because they can physically be live the longest and therefore get the most exposure. On YouTube, its recommendations are somewhat dictated by topic. If someone releases a successful video and someone makes a reaction to it, the algorithm says, oh, these are part of the same topic, so I should push them both. If the algorithm did not have this tendency, people would watch less reaction content because it would be served to them far less. One of the biggest bits of evidence against the idea that the reactors are bringing something special to this equation that's making these videos be big is Jinx. Jinx was one of the first big reactors, and what he would do is re-upload other people's videos and just watch them. He wouldn't speak during them, he wouldn't pause them, he would just smile and laugh occasionally, then maybe at the end say a sentence and end the video. This over a short period got him 1.5 million subscribers and 200 million views. He could obviously upload far more than anyone else, and due to how the algorithm works with pushing topics, he was pushed everywhere. He wasn't doing something special, it's just a quirk in how the algorithm works on YouTube. The reason why XQC can sit watching Breaking Bad saying nothing is because the value being provided here is the original content plus the watch party. People enjoy watching things in a group, especially with like-minded people. The argument that the reactor is somehow special misses the point that if they didn't have these reaction videos, all these people watching them right now would never have found them. Without reaction videos, they'd be required to do the actual work to make this content, so they'd have far fewer videos promoting them in the algorithm on YouTube. And as far as live streaming goes, they'd be live far less, because they'd actually have to make things, rather than simply watching things. If the reactors didn't have this content to flood the market, the viewers who consume it would necessarily have to go other places to satiate themselves and their need for content. My argument is that it doesn't benefit other creators for these people to take greater market share than they would otherwise be able to. That the existence of hubs of all the best content on the internet ultimately doesn't benefit all those people producing that content themselves. Nor are those who make themselves the nexus of this content deserving of being in that position. There will always be demand for unethical things in the market. That does not mean that people should seek to fill that demand at the expense of other people. To further clarify, as this is an argument that I've heard, the amount of people that you can find that will inadvertently work against their own interests is not evidence of the system being good. It is just a fact of life that each of us at some point will inadvertently believe something to be good when we're actually wrong. Being wrong is just a fact of life. The debate around reaction content cannot be reduced to this creator likes it, this creator doesn't like it. It's literally meaningless. Everything from Hustlers University to multi-level marketing schemes to Nazism will have some supporters. It doesn't mean that these systems are good by any metric. As we've seen throughout history, there will always be times where some people consider something to be good and then public opinion shifts. Any amount of people supporting something can never be an argument in of itself that that thing is actually good. Because there are many terrible, horrible things in history that the majority have at least at one point supported.
Basically, Dark Viper's last response video is just him doubling down on all the takes that he has in this essay and in his other response video. So by watching this shorter one with me, you'll have gotten everything that he has to say.
Gabi in no way, shape, or form represents my views fairly or accurately. If you're interested, you can go read my original essay and see that it's certainly the case. But if you want more information on this topic, I highly recommend just watching the video that came from that essay. Well, yes, the finalized script was like 3 times the length and the video is over an hour, but it's a really good video. I have received substantial praise for that video. For example, Linus from Linus Tech Tips talked about how the video informed the policies that his company was taking towards that content. Also, not a single reactor has responded to it. Egotistical reactors will take any opportunity to get a free dunk, but they can't in this case, because it definitively shows that they have no basis for what they do.
I'm sorry if that first part was a little random and kind of all over the place. I have ADHD, so that's just how it is.
While it is beside the point for this video, I do not like when people erroneously use diagnoses that they have as an excuse for simple laziness. Gabi could have scripted her video. She could have done more research. She could have recorded more footage or just voice lines instead of putting text in post. This video that Gabi made was poorly researched, poorly thought out, poorly put together. That has nothing to do with her having ADHD. Gabi, do better. One can imagine she'll come out and be like, okay, yeah, I did lie and misrepresent a lot of stuff, but like, I have ADHD, I couldn't help it, haha. It just paints things as though people with ADHD are just incapable people. It's gross.
I am a small creator, and I've literally only seen benefit from other people reacting to my content. This is just an entire whole like new world that you've created about the YouTube narrative in your head that doesn't exist and doesn't make sense.
I put $5 in a slot machine yesterday and I won $1,000. I think we can know from this that slot machines must be the greatest ways to make money in the world. Everyone go out and put money in slot machines. It should be obvious that one individual instance where something is good for a person is obviously not evidence of anything. Moreover, as I've talked about many times, it is very hard to assess the actual impact of reaction content on any creator. Because you have to remember that while one reaction video could be leading people towards your content, every other reaction video on the market is only doing one thing, trying to get viewers to not watch you and to watch the reactors instead. A crude, simplified animation of a reactor's influence on the market looks something like this. So a creator's video is taken by a reactor. That reactor uses that video to pull viewers away from original creators to themselves. But the person who gave them the video gets a little kickback from this relationship. This is where most people's interest in reaction content ends, but mine is more expansive. What happens to this person with every reaction video that the reactor further uploads? And hell, what happens to everyone else in the market? What this animation is meant to conceptualize is that even a person who's reacted to doesn't gain from every subsequent reaction to other people's content. That content is just as likely to draw viewers away from them to the reactor as it is from anyone else. So even that initial person who originally got some more viewers through a reaction is now in the hole, as viewers who would have otherwise watched their content are now being presented impressions for reaction videos instead and are therefore watching those. So the only person in this relationship who ends up out ahead is the reactor, because they end up with countless additional videos for no cost or effort, while all the creators have to go back to the mines, slowly being bled dry by this reactor. But they of course are completely unaware of this, because this represents unrealized gains, viewership that they never see because the market is being swamped by reaction videos. This animation is simplified and only applies to some context. It's meant to communicate only one idea. It doesn't prove an idea, it simply communicates it. I need to stress this because my experience with Most Critical tells me that, people don't really understand what explanatory diagrams are. At the end of the day, what I'm arguing is that reaction content works exactly the same way as the lottery does. The lottery doesn't exist to make other people rich, it exists to make those who run the lottery rich. Reaction content exists for the exact same purpose. These large creators sitting on their asses watching other people's hard work are not doing so to benefit other people. They are doing so specifically to bring viewers away from other creators to themselves. And that is exactly what they achieve. The people at the top, as they do more reaction content, don't end up losing viewers. The viewers aren't sent other places to spend their limited time there. What ends up happening is they grow bigger because they get more exposure to the market with videos that they wouldn't otherwise be able to have, taking market share that they otherwise wouldn't have, that other people would necessarily end up filling, so that they become richer and everyone else suffers. In the same way that an individual can win with the lottery, it is hypothetically possible for a creator to win when they get reacted to, but the market as a whole will never win. Reaction content is a system specifically designed to only benefit one class of people, and that is those making that content. An interesting question I would like to see Gabi answer is this. Let's say we exist in a hypothetical world where there is no reaction content. 100% of impressions on YouTube go to original content. I would say this is the most optimal situation we could be in for getting people to actually watch the original creators. If you support reaction content, you must disagree. You must believe that the introduction of a middleman improves that system somehow. Therefore, what percentage of impressions should be taken away from original creators and given to reactors instead, and why?
Basically, Dark Viper's last response video is just him doubling down on all the takes that he has in this essay and in his other response video. So by watching this shorter one with me, you'll have gotten everything that he has to say.
So understand, I wrote a very long essay. The amount that Gabi showed of it was like 2, maybe 3 lines. I then made a 45-minute video. Gabi showed none of this except me saying 14 pages. I then made a shorter video that in no way, shape, or form presents my arguments or argues in favor of them, and this is the one she wants to show to people. I wonder why.
Original content creators are worse off? How? How?
I suppose another way of phrasing this question would be, how could it possibly be that some entities in the market finding a way to lower their costs, lower their production time, and increase their quality, how could that possibly impact other people's ability to survive in that market? Ah, you got me. I guess there is no way that could have an impact. After all, the markets are infinite in this magical fairyland, so...
Please tell me how. I would love to see some documentation on how if Critical reacts to your video's never gonna blow up now. Are you kidding me?
Gabi again doesn't understand that it isn't an issue of one person interacting with another, but the effect of reaction content on the market as a whole. Maybe it's the topic that confuses Gabi? How about Walmart moves to a town. Walmart then proceeds to sell more and more and more goods. This attracts more and more people to continuously buy things from Walmart. There is only a finite amount of demand for goods in that area, and people only have a finite amount of money to spend. And so the more money that people spend at Walmart rather than other stores around the area, this makes it harder for those stores to survive. The principles at play here are the same sort of principles that work out on YouTube. We are all putting our videos on the marketplace saying, hey look, watch this. But people only have a finite amount of time to watch videos. There's also a finite amount of demand for any type of content. So as people increase their supply in the market, attempting to attract more viewers to themselves and away from others, this can make it harder for some people to survive. The algorithm can only promote a finite amount of videos at any given time, and so it has to pick and choose. These are just general market principles. And even while I'm less interested in an individual reaction video's impact on the original video, that can obviously cause harm as well. For example, Mad Season just released a video on this topic, which was, to be honest, quite bad, but there was at least one interesting point in it. In this clip, he compares the viewership he was getting on a video before and after it was reacted to.
I did actually take the time to average all of these out, and as you can just visually see here, we have a pretty significant decrease in viewership, presumably due to the fact that from this date, there are now 2 major copies of this video sharing the algorithm. And I think that's a pretty reasonable conclusion to make, considering that the dip started directly after the reaction was made and posted.
And it's like, no shit, reactions are substitutes for the original video. If you've seen the reaction, you don't need to watch the original anymore. And for some people that know the reactor, that's now a superior version to the original. But you know who didn't lose in that equation? The guy uploading 10 reaction videos a day, who did absolutely no work for those videos, and who's released literally thousands of videos through this scheme. But in saying all this, I don't care. We cannot simply look at one video when trying to assess the impact of reactors on the creator economy as a whole. Whether or not the people doing the actual work really benefit from all the people sitting at the top spamming out re-uploads at the speed of sound. It would be like looking at the wins and losses that one particular individual had when playing the slot machines last week. It's not important. My interest will always be, does reaction content as a whole lead to people watching original content creators more? And how this could possibly be true given that reaction videos only exist to draw an audience to the reactor, and therefore away from everyone else.
Do you know how the online creator marketplace works? Once again, you have almost 1 million subscribers and are so dense about all the criticism that you've received, a lot of it being constructive. I've seen it. If Critical watches Mr. Hot Dog making video and reacts to it on stream, cuts that up and uploads it to his YouTube channel, do you know what's going to be suggested in the suggested bar? What's going to be next to that video? I recommend that you pay attention next time, because I guarantee you one of those suggestions is going to be the Mr. Hot Dog Man, the Mr. Sausage Making Man channel. I've seen it. I don't know how you are purposefully misrepresenting this concept and idea and your opinion as a fact, because it's literally not true. It's not an indisputable fact. It's your garbage take on how YouTube works. It's not true at all. I don't know how you can argue that this is true. Here, you know what? Let's try it.
I turned my astrology gift into a business.
Look, I literally disproved his point in 5 seconds. This is Charlie's reaction video to Ordinary Sausage, and look what the first recommendation is on the side. It's Ordinary Sausage, who back then, when Charlie reacted to this video, had 3,000 subscribers, to his word. That's what he said. I don't know how you're saying that these original creators are worse off. It's absurd. Unless they are just straight ripping and re-uploading the content, they are not worse off, I promise.
So I'm not going to repeat myself, but let me one-up you. So I go to YouTube and they go, oh, here's an original video, and I click it. And would you look at that, this original content has gotten 1 view from me, and my entire thing here is full of original content creators. Gabi had the option to click on an original video, but she didn't. She clicked on a reaction video, representing a loss of 1 view to original content. On her sidebar wasn't all original content. It was the Reactors content. So the reaction content acted as a pipeline, taking Gabi away from original content to the reactor, and then additional impressions of the Reactors content. If she had clicked literally anything else on the platform, an original creator would have gotten a view and impressions from that click. This represents nothing but a loss. The Sausage Man may have gotten some impressions there, great, but imagine all those original content creators who would have been shown to you had you not clicked a reaction video and been given impressions for that reactor. Are they not worse off? And conceptually, over the course of the entire platform, there will be impressions that the Sausage Man would have gotten if not for the interference of reaction content. Someone out there, rather than getting an impression for the Sausage Man, is getting a reaction impression instead. Reactors acting as the middleman for the exposure given by the algorithm will always represent a loss to everyone else as a totality. More than this, cronyism and favoritism should not dictate who becomes successful on this platform. Even in some fantasy land where reactors become the kingmakers and they decide who's successful, that is not a better system.
In this video, he also says he thinks that the people criticizing him haven't read the document and or haven't understood it. How could you say that?
For one, people admitted that they didn't read it, XQC and Hassan for example. Secondly, because I wrote it, I am the foremost expert of what's in it and what it means. And therefore I can see when people communicate concepts as to whether or not they understood or not. But more importantly, people will say things about what's in it that are untrue. It is usually the case that even when you disagree with something, if you understand it, you will phrase your disagreements in a particular way in light of your understanding of what they're saying. And I obviously have some ability to recognize those who have understanding and those who do not. Thirdly, as a principle, people on the internet don't read things. Ignoring that Charlie didn't link the article in the first place. The tendency of some people to read the title of an article and then simply share it on that basis alone is so pronounced that people do studies of this phenomenon. But in this particular case, people didn't even have a link for it. It was a long document from a stranger on an esoteric topic that they didn't even have a link to that Charlie in effect called rape apologia. It is delusional to think even a significant portion of people who are passing judgment on my work actually read the thing. Has Gabi never seen the memes where it's like, that's really long, I'm not gonna read that, but I'm happy or sad for you, dude. Like, for fuck's sakes, TLDR is literally in her title. Too long did not read. At the beginning of her video, Gabi complained profusely about the length of the essay and my video. I can see the back end of my video and how many people started and did not get to the end. Obviously, relatively speaking, only a tiny fraction of people who made any commentary on my work actually read the damn thing. What's especially strange about what Gabi says here is that she on one hand wants to argue that my essay was so poorly written that no one could possibly understand it, but she also wants to criticize me for saying that people didn't understand the essay. You can't have it both ways. You have to pick one.
Yeah, I get it. You can be mad that it's lazy content, but who are you to police what people should be doing and what kind of content people should be making online? You don't have to like the content. I get it. If you don't like it, here's an idea. Don't watch it, dude. Like, I hate this whole argument that, you know, the content is lazy and we should therefore punish these creators who are doing it because it's bad and I don't like it. If there's content you don't like, guess what? Turn it the off.
You don't have to agree with me to understand my perspective. Obviously, my issues with reaction content isn't simply that it's lazy. There are many lazy forms of content that exist that are perfectly fine. My argument is that it is harmful. You don't have to agree with that to understand why my non-participation in the content is not a solution to the issues that I outline. Again, this either represents Gabi as ridiculously stupid or ridiculously dishonest. So Gabi seems to have realized in post that what she says here is extremely hypocritical, given that in this video, Gabi advocated for calling out people who make harmful content. I understand this could be hypocritical, but I'm more talking about how people go out of their way to attack people for just making content, not for their ideals. And why do you want to attack people for their ideals? Because you believe they cause harm. Gabi is effectively trying to argue here that no one should be called out for the content that they make. Like, you remember all those terrible prank videos where people would dress up as terrorists and freak out people? Like, that's terrible stuff and should be called out for being harmful. Gabi's like, no process by which content is made can ever be bad. No content can ever be harmful. Only ideals can be harmful. Insane. Reactors aren't just making content. They are harming people with what they do. As is the case sometimes with negative externalities, sometimes even those most harmed will never even know. Gabi now attempts hilariously to substantiate that impressions are infinite.
So I realized I didn't provide my own source of information besides thinking logically and looking on YouTube and thinking about it for over 1 second and realizing there's no such thing as a finite pool of impressions. But regardless, I contacted my sister, who is an expert in impressions and marketing. She has worked in the industry for over 10 years. This is literally her specialty. She knows exactly how it works. She's worked for multiple Fortune 500 companies with the knowledge of this exact thing. So this is what she had to say. This is about impressions. It's less limited eyeballs than it is the limited attention spans and threshold for seeing the same kind of content over and over. It's not true. If anything, it's making the content being commented on more desirable. Commentary content is the 2022 version of old ladies gossiping in the town square. When something big or not worthy happens, in the past people would gather around the people that they want to hear their opinion on the subject on. Also, people love to hate things more than they love to love things, which is so amplified online. Scientifically, an impression is defined by the number of times a piece of content appears on the screen. There is no limit unless it's a piece of content that is deleted, then it is finite. She is using voice to text, cause damn. But as things live on the internet and it can be found again, you can still have impressions, and things often resurface years later also as the search words become trendy. For example, you could have written a blog post on what would happen if we were in a P word in 2012, and it would lay dormant for years, but then would surge in site traffic in 2020. There is no such thing as a finite pool of impressions.
So we're not given the full conversation, so we will never know if Gabi didn't ask the right question or her sister didn't understand the question. The question that Gabi's sister answered wasn't, are impressions finite? Instead, she answered, is there a finite amount of impressions that something can receive? And her answer to that second question was, well, I guess as long as it's still on the internet somewhere, it could hypothetically add some impressions tomorrow, a year from now, 10 years from now, doesn't matter. But you can probably see that that doesn't answer the first question. Maybe you're not following, so we'll change the word impression to hot dog. So we want to know, are there a finite amount of hot dogs? And I say to you, well, of course you can eat as many hot dogs as you want until the day you die. That doesn't address the question. It doesn't tell you how many hot dogs exist now, or can exist, or will exist ever. It tells you nothing. It doesn't answer the question at all. There are no hypothetical limits to how many impressions a thing can get, but that doesn't make the source of those impressions infinite. What's more disturbing is that Gabi's sister says things that directly argue against claims that Gabi makes in her video. Gabi claimed earlier that of course all the commentary channels can be successful or discussing the exact same things infinitely. But of course that's not true, because there's only a finite amount of demand for that sort of content. Again, the conversation is cut off, but it does seem as though Gabi's sister was originally talking about the attention economy, which is another form of phrasing that I myself have used to communicate the finite nature of these markets. I will assume that Gabi's sister didn't finish explaining this entirely to Gabi. Charlie argues that I should have expected the outcome that my script would be given to creators and a response would happen. I disagree that this was a reasonable expectation. Even in hindsight, I still don't think it would have been reasonable to expect.
No. You can't tell me that someone with 900,000 subscribers didn't expect some of his audience to go through this and see these streamers by name and then tell them about it. The same document to where you compare React streamers to so yeah, you should have expected this. Even in hindsight, he is doubling down.
So many creators were referenced in that document, and the amount of people who responded to it was exactly one, which was Charlie. And of course, I have said all these things before, directly, multiple times, in different contexts, and never received this response. Again, if it wasn't for Charlie making a lot of videos hyping up random things he sees on Twitter, the attention that my unfinished script would have gotten would of course been very minimal. If I wanted attention and a response, I would have made a video. Because you know, I'm a YouTuber. I wanted neither. I was very busy. And Charlie got off very lightly because I wanted to get back to my work.
You're saying this as if these React streamers are re-uploading original content to their channels. They're not some sort of MCN. Typically, it's always interrupted by commentary, and most of those people will want to go check it out for themselves.
If you're sitting watching The Lion King and you pause it and say, hey, I like Simba, he's like, cool, and then you unpause it, it's still the same movie. When you pause the movie and get up and go take a piss and come back, that's still the same movie. When you watch a reactor watch something, you are also watching that thing. By the time they're done, you will have seen the entirety of the original work. Even in cases where there's minor editing, you will have seen the heart of the work. They are clearly watching videos in order to re-upload them to their YouTube channels. A person pressing a pause button every once in a while and giving their thoughts on what they just saw is not creative work. It is not creativity, it is not transforming the original work. You've seen the entire original work by the end, unaltered, unchanged, exactly as it was originally expressed. Gabi seems to have realized in post that saying most people who watch a video with a reactor then go and watch it again on the original person's channel is absurd. And even if they go over, they don't watch it again. They might click like, leave a comment and leave, which is terrible engagement, and certainly far worse engagement than actual watch time. In my finalized video from my essay, I look at the statistics, the click-through rate, the subscribers that people get from reactions. They are exceptionally low. Impressions on YouTube on average get clicked about 5% of the time. These then convert into actual watch time and money and subscriptions and likes and additional impressions. The click-through rate from a reaction to the original video is less than 1%. As a system, reactions are taking impressions that have a 5% click-through rate to original creators, changing them to themselves, and then giving an even lesser click-through rate to one individual creator. It is a terrible middleman system. It represents an inefficiency in the market, judged by something's ability to move a viewer to an original creator. Obviously, because the goal of reaction content isn't to get people to watch other creators, it's to get people to watch the reactor.
And if you did just watch the whole video with Pokimane on stream and you weren't really interested, you weren't gonna go watch that video anyway.
But statistically speaking, you would have been watching something else. Maybe not that exact video, but something else. It is not just about the original video. This is highlighted so many times throughout my work. I cannot believe even someone as dense as Gabi never understood this. You do not need to agree to understand the perspective.
This entire situation is extremely nuanced and not black and white and extremely simplistic as you want to make it seem. It's not just, oh, these creators are gone, all those impressions are going to smaller creators.
So there's a meme from a very long time ago where I exclaim, "No one can be this dumb!" But Gabi has taught me anything is possible. I do not truly understand the depths of human stupidity. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe the infinite does truly exist, in that perhaps the depth of human stupidity is truly infinite, as demonstrated by Gabi.
Your original argument can make a lot of sense, and fundamentally, I actually agree with it.
I have absolutely no idea what Gabi thinks my original argument is, or what that could possibly even refer to. She does not even slightly understand my perspective on anything, and I'm fairly convinced she does not have the mental capability to do so. Throughout their content, I explained my perspective in many different ways with many different examples, and Gabi still didn't understand it. That is insane. But even more so, despite not understanding it even slightly, she still felt confident enough in her ignorance to make a video this dumb. Mind-boggling. In this next part, Gabi speaks of my references to spiking people's drinks. When the script was released, the most I heard from one person was that they could be taken in the wrong way.
You didn't hear that just from just one person. You heard that from multiple people. You're pretending that this was just like one person taking one thing out of context and getting mad.
Again, Gabi seems blissfully unaware of the nature of the response that my essay got prior to Charlie releasing his video where he misrepresented it to 2 million people. After I had already spent many hours taking in the feedback from my audience and changing my essay, there was one guy on Twitter who said he didn't like it. Like, fuck me dead. The main thing that Gabi's put on screen this entire time is not even my tweet of my essay. It's not even my essay, but a reply to this comment. Gabi seems to be like, what do you mean everyone didn't go to your tweet, dig down in the replies to find this reply, and then found your reply to that reply? Everyone saw that, man. What are you talking about? Like, obviously, when a trusted creator like Most Critical says, hey, this guy's out here calling Reactors rapists, that's gonna elicit a response. And the vast majority are not gonna read a fucking essay, Gabi. Come on. It is the unfortunate case that popular people define reality for a lot of people. In the same way that my essay clearly does not talk about just small creators, but Gabi had to continue to hammer that home. It does, even though it clearly does not. Because Charlie said that, and for that reason alone, Gabi would defend it to the death.
Like, if you had intentions with this document, clearly most of it didn't get across.
No one fucking read it. The people who did understand it, and they agreed. Most people based their understanding of the essay on what Charlie said, and he misrepresented every aspect of it and misunderstood it in a way that was hilarious to watch.
And you shouldn't need consent to exercise free speech and react to content that you disagree with or agree with. I am not an expert on fair use, but you are completely in the right to react to content and do so. And just because you don't agree with React content doesn't mean you should be comparing them to people who would spike your drink. If we had to ask for consent to everything that we reacted to, content creators that should be made aware are not good people like Rice Gum and whatever Logan Paul did back in the day, should be made aware through the exercising of free speech. I'm allowed to comment on these things.
These are just insane assertions that the only way to communicate that something is bad is to completely redistribute that creative work. As if no one called anyone out before the existence of people sitting on live stream and watching YouTube videos. This is insane. I am not going to rehash the guidelines for fair use or the cases related to it. I did it in another video. But goddamn, no! None of this is legal, and it's also not necessary. And as I've covered before, reaction videos are the worst way to call out other creators. Make a creative video. Bring together multiple different things that they've done. Make a case, script it. Presenting your first-time impressions to someone else's work to call them out is not responsible, nor is the redistribution of other people's hard work necessary for free speech.
You're acting like nobody read your document and you're just getting this criticism out of nowhere because some people took things out of context. They didn't. Many people read your document, actually. In the document right now, there's over 30 people in here reading it.
Holy shit! 30 people! Did you hear that, guys? 30 people! So it would take about half an hour for the average person to read an essay of that length. So Charlie's original video was seen by about 2 million people. Maintaining a constant rate of 30 people reading that essay, it would take about 4 years for everyone who watched that video to read it. So you know, any fucking day now. I do not understand why it is so important to Gabi for her to believe that the entire internet is just like an essay-loving group. They've all putting on their reading glasses, sitting before the fire, and reading random essays written by strangers on the internet. What an insane world Gabi must live in. You remember when Twitter used to ask people, hey, are you sure you've read this article? You should probably read it before you post it. Gabi must have thought that fucking insane, like, but everyone always reads everything in which they comment on the internet. No one in history has ever shared an article based merely on the headline, or judged the contents of an article on the headline. That's absurd. People on the internet love reading essays. This fantasy world Gabi lives in is insane. So while I do have a lot more very interesting things to say, this is somewhat me wrapping up the video, finally. When I first saw this video from Gabi, I was honestly very surprised at how little she knew, yet how confident she felt in what she knew. Further, how bad she was at reasoning or understanding the implications of her own words, let alone my words for that matter. But then I stumbled across a clip in one of her other videos that made me understand Gabi a bit more as a person.
But then, what is ethical? I'm in a philosophy class and I want to die. I hate philosophy, I'm not gonna lie. My advisor in college was a philosophy professor, and every time he started to talk about philosophy, my brain just shut off and I switched majors and I got a different advisor.
That makes so much sense. One thing that was very strange to me was something that Gabi stressed so many times at the end of her video.
But this is my opinion. This whole video is my opinion.
Oh my gosh, guys, I did just misinform you for like 40 minutes, but you can't be mad because it's just my opinion. As if she doesn't have to try to be accurate because they're just her opinions. As if the things that she said in this video that are massively incorrect aren't going to have ramifications to how other people live their lives. She appears entirely uncaring as to how her words might impact other people. Sure, she might get everything wrong, but who cares? just opinions. You can see this belief echoed in her support of people watching videos in order to debunk them. Of course, just in real time, you can watch someone else's video and just debunk it like that as you go. The world is a simple place. You don't need research. No, you can just do it in real time. Let's go. Sure, you might get 700 things wrong, but who cares? Other people don't matter. It seems as though these days there's no consequence to not even trying to be accurate in what you're saying. On YouTube, you are better off shooting from the hip, releasing video after video, and then maybe giving a backhanded apology if you get something wrong. If you want to spend all the time doing the research, making sure everything is perfect, you'll be miles behind the people just shooting from the hip. You release 1/10 the video. Sure, they may be more factually accurate, but that's not going to be valued on the market. These people will always be behind the Gabis of the world, who believe just because they can wake up in the morning that this makes them all-knowing deities who can speak on anything with accuracy. Originally, I wanted to cast judgment on the 15,000 people who liked Gabi's video. But then I realized for most people, they just click on a video, don't really think about it, and then click off and do something else. They don't think deeply about what they're hearing. They're just like, oh yeah, this seems pretty good, and then they move on with their day. People to some degree just have to hope that the person they're listening to isn't malicious and deceitful as Gabi is. These people, as far as I'm concerned, are perhaps even more a victim of Gabi's video than I am. So obviously, Gabi's video isn't the first video to misrepresent me and my work to hundreds of thousands of people. But I'll be honest with you, it never gets easier. The knowledge that there are so many people out there who believe false things about me and there's nothing I can do about it eats me up inside. I would like to say this past year was sufficient for me to get over all that stuff that happened a year ago, but I still have not. Being misrepresented, and in many cases directly lied about, provably lied about, by so many people, and having that accepted by so many is something that radically shifts your view of the world and other people. Like, obviously, Gabi is not going to care about this. A person who cares about the well-being of other people could not make a video like that. But you can obviously see how a person will come to view the world negatively when they realize that there is no consequences for the suffering that Gabi will cause. She will go on to this to countless people over her career and suffer nothing for doing so, because that is the world we live in. Those who have no care for accuracy and no care for others will obviously be able to sprint ahead of anyone that does, and they will receive nothing but rewards for doing so. For most of my life, my only aspiration was to go out and help other people to make the world a better place. But honestly, at this point, I don't think I'll ever be strong enough to do that. How do people who actually go out there and try to make the world better deal with people like Gabi? Selfish, dishonest liars who care about no one but themselves. To some degree, I've become convinced that maybe the world can't get better. There's just a continuous cycle of things getting slowly better than slowly worse forever. But maybe I just want to emotionally believe that, so I can justify my cowardice for not being able to face terrible people like Gabi more often. So yeah, thank you for watching. Sorry this video is not as substantive or as well argued as the actual video that I made on the topic of reaction content that came from my essay. If at the end of this video you find yourself being like, I have more questions, or I don't agree with this, or I don't agree with that, it's probably explained far better in that video. This video was bogged down by Gabi's misunderstandings and poor reasoning that, as far as I'm aware, are entirely unique to her. That is another reason why I felt it important to make this video. While I certainly hope Gabi is fairly unique in the world, she can't be, right? So maybe this video will answer the objections of that few percent of people that exists in Gabi's fantasy land. And with that, I wish you all the best. Boop.